Hello and welcome to another video where today we're taking a look at a Stormhaven deck, or at least that's the premise. So that's what we're aiming for. In Unlimited, of course, this is actually a fairly solid deck. It can do quite well, really relying on, of course, the really big hitters Sentinel, which is really nice, but more important, Ruler of Storms can do a lot of damage. Comboing with Holy Lord to really pull off big combos with Beast Call Aria, Divine Birdsong, or really just any other kind of Pinion Prayer, anything that can really get advantage. Also, Forgotten Sanctuary is nice. You're also running a couple of City of Gold, card definitely to keep an eye on. Sometimes I do forget that I'm running two, sometimes I worry I'm only running one, so when I draw it I get a little worried, but just trying to remember that running two, so it's really easy just to pull off on turn two, get it out, and then go from there. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So for our first matchup, we're actually against Haven, so that's fairly good. We've got a mirror-ish match, Haven versus Haven. Although there are so many different Haven variants that getting a straight mirror is really quite rare, especially in Unlimited. And of course we start off with a City of Gold. See, optimally I would probably pull a City of Gold from my deck, but as I mentioned, it's very easy to forget that I'm running more than one City of Gold, because some decks will run one, some decks will run a three, and then you just gotta remember which ones you're running. So I decided just to play my City of Gold. And there is the Beast Call Aria from our opponent. But Mori is going to be a fairly decent card to start this off, especially since we've got plenty of draw here. And our opponent doesn't really have a lot. They're going a lot slower since they don't have their own city. So now it's just a matter of us slowly building our board up and keeping our hand nice and stocked up with cards. This deck definitely is on the slower side normally. Mark of Balance. I actually don't mind that in the early game. Healing your opponent in the early game is actually fairly decent, since they're not really going to get any advantage out of it, whereas in my case I've got advantage out of it already. Burning a couple of cards though does hurt. Since we are so stacked at the moment for cards. At least we didn't burn anything super good. At least not for this matchup. Now we just need to be able to pretty much take this board. Since they have annihilated our city, with another one in our deck, we may be able to get it back if we need it. Although, since we don't really need it right now, it's not a too big an issue. Oh, Godsworn, that's going to slow us down a little bit. I mean, limiting us to 4 damage for every damage source is going to be pretty harsh on big drops like Holy Lord. But this should be a really nice way to deal with this, as an Evo on the Holy Lord will leave it with 1 health, but at the same time will leave us with both wards. So it's a pretty decent position to be in. It's really just a matter of slow and steady at this point. There is the Themis Decree, and not really much else. So at this point, Winged Sentinel is a good option. Since these amulets were going to proc next turn anyway, I may as well try and set up as much as I can, so that we can try and go for a Ruler of Storms finisher. And there's another Decree. Absolutely nuts. Well, because they've really left us with a decent turn to stack up the board, there's not really much reason just to play Ruler right now. That way we can get 6 damage instead of 3 out of it next turn. Servant of Repose. Not bad. And now just a casual Ruler of Storms. That's going to be 6 damage to the face, and probably an extra 2 with our Pinion, because we're going to use the 5/4 to clear the ward. Actually, we've also got these 3 damage from the 3/4, so that's actually a really nice turn. And there is the concede. Obviously they've used all their major removal and can't deal with a board like that. Next up, HavenCraft. OTK Forest is fairly common, so usually when you go into a match that's what you want to expect. So you definitely want to be playing the more casual matchup. After all, like I said, this deck is on the slower side. Don't expect the matches to be extremely quick with this deck. Even though it is a Stormhaven based deck, it is still one of the more slow decks. I would almost put it more in a tempo category than an aggro category these days. Not like the old Stormhavens that were pretty much pure aggression. But that doesn't really take away from the deck. It's still very solid and does a pretty nice job once you start getting the hang of it. So our opponent really hasn't done a lot at all, so that was a pretty nice amount of setup we'll manage to get. From here it's really just a matter of maintaining the setup that we've set so far. Pinion Prayer is a nice way to do it, and a Globe of Stairways. And even better, a Moray on top of that. So we're going to have a really nice next turn. We're going to have all 3 amulets proc and keep 1 Stairway on board, and have a 2/1 Storm, and they end up just passing turn 4. See, most of this was them just passing turns, probably because they just couldn't deal with what we had and they didn't want to lose too much to the Morays, which makes sense. And here we go, they're starting off their roaches, getting in a little bit of damage while removing stuff. Not a huge surprise there. Fortunately for them, it's probably going to be their downfall. Especially since I can just use the Evo on this and strike them pretty hard. And we'll throw the Opinion down as well, just as an extra layer of defense in case they do remove this 7/3. I mean, you're not really want to leave the 7/3 up, so removing it's probably going to be their optimal line of play. And at this point they're going to heal as well, so no surprise there. And this is actually fairly good for us. We're going to be able to remove that and play our Holy Lord, getting 4 damage and setting up reasonably decently. Will of the Forest is going to deal a bit of damage, but not enough to remove everything. So it didn't leave him with too many options. Oh, and a Ruler of Storms. Could not ask for a much better setup there. It's going to be very hard for our opponent to come back from this now. Them having to pass so many early turns really did screw them over a lot, and now that we've set up wards, it's going to be very hard for them to go for a decent lethal. So no surprise that we see the concede. So if you guys did enjoy this video, this deck is fairly solid. Again, it is on the slower side. There's not anything super exciting about it, but it is also reasonably cheap. Only running the legendary for Holy Lord is actually fairly decent. The only other cards that you may struggle to have is Winged Sentinel if you are a newer player. Otherwise, most of these cards are bronze and silvers, which most players will probably have. The golds are really not that many either. I mean, we've got 8 golds. That's a fairly low number compared to most decks, so definitely pretty reasonable. If you guys are interested in this deck, you'll find it in the description below. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Until next time, see ya.